Princess Ilara of the Zenith Empire stood defiantly on the balcony of her family's palace, gazing at the stars. Her people were renowned for their technological advancements and deep suspicion of other species, especially humans. No Zenith royal had ever set foot on a human vessel, but now, faced with the rigid expectations of her people, Ilara was determined to challenge that tradition. For her grand voyage, a time-honored rite of passage marking her transition into adulthood, Ilara insisted on traveling aboard a human ship. The Council of Elders was outraged, and her father, Emperor Alden, had nearly forbidden it, fearing that associating with humans would tarnish the Empire's reputation. However, after days of relentless debate and political maneuvering, the Emperor finally conceded, though under strict conditions. Accompanied by an elite guard of Zenithian warriors and her closest advisors, Ilara was set to embark on the stellar Horizon, the most advanced human exploration ship ever built. The Council insisted on closely monitoring her presence to prevent any undue influence, but Ilara knew this was her one chance to see the universe on her own terms. Her advisor, Taryn, approached from behind. "Princess, the Council remains uneasy. They believe humans are unpredictable, chaotic, and prone to conflict. You are taking a great risk." Ilara turned, her eyes fierce. "It's a risk I'm willing to take. I'm tired of the Council's constant interference. If I am to lead my people one day, I must see the universe for myself, not through the distorted lens of our history. Humans are more than what we've been told. I intend to find out the truth." Taryn sighed, but said nothing more. He knew better than to argue when Ilara had made up her mind. On Earth, Captain Elias Ward of the Stellar Horizon received the unexpected news of Princess Ilara's request with a mixture of surprise and intrigue. The diplomatic relationship between humanity and the Zenith Empire had always been delicate, and this was an unprecedented opportunity to bridge the gap between their species. A seasoned explorer known for his level-headed leadership, Ward had guided his crew through countless unknown territories. His ship, equipped with cutting-edge technology, was designed for long-range missions beyond the known galaxy. The fact that royalty would be traveling aboard his vessel was both an honor and a challenge. "Well, this will be interesting," Ward muttered as he briefed his crew. "We've got ourselves a royal guest, and from what I hear, she has a reputation for being persistent. I want everyone on their best behavior." Chief Engineer Talia Mercer raised an eyebrow. "Do we need to roll out the red carpet?" Ward chuckled. "Something like that. But remember, she's here to see what humans are capable of. Let's make sure she's impressed." As the Stellar Horizon prepared for launch, tensions were already simmering beneath the surface. Not everyone welcomed the Zenith Princess aboard. A radical human group known as Earth Sovereignty viewed Ilara's presence as a threat, believing it was part of a Zenithian scheme to exert control over human space. Their leader, Ronan Voss, had been rallying support for months, convinced that humanity must break away from all alien alliances and assert dominance in the galaxy. "We can't let this happen," Voss declared to his followers. "First, they send their princess, then they infiltrate our systems. Before we know it, we'll be nothing more than a puppet state under their empire. This mission must be stopped." Plans were set in motion. As the Stellar Horizon prepared to depart, unseen dangers lurked beneath the surface. As the countdown to launch began, Ilara stood by the viewport of her private quarters aboard the ship, her heart racing with anticipation. This was the moment she had been waiting for, her chance to break free from the constraints of royal duty and explore the universe on her own terms. She was aware of the risks. Humans were still an enigma to her people, and many aboard the ship viewed her with suspicion. But Ilara was determined to prove that her decision to travel with them was more than just a political statement. It was an opportunity for understanding, for growth, and perhaps even for cooperation between their species. Captain Ward's voice crackled over the ship's intercom. "Princess Ilara, welcome aboard the Stellar Horizon. We're honored to have you with us. Our mission is about to begin, and I assure you, This will be a journey like no other." Ilara smiled, excitement surging within her. The ship rumbled as the engines roared to life, and moments later they were soaring through the stars, leaving the safety of her homeworld far behind. But as the stellar horizon ventured into the unknown, Ilara couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching, waiting for the right moment to strike. Her journey was just beginning, and the universe held secrets she could never have imagined. Deep, within the stellar horizon, hidden in the lower decks, a threat was already brewing. Ronan Voss and his band of extremists had managed to stow away in the cargo hold, their presence concealed by falsified records and bribed officials. Their mission was clear. Ilara must never make it back to Zenith. Voss leaned against a crate, his sharp features illuminated by the dim lighting. His followers, a mix of ideologues and fanatics, watched him intently as he spoke. "This is our chance to show the galaxy that humanity will not bow to any alien empire. If we allow the Zenithians to gain influence over us, it will be the end of human independence. We strike soon." One of his lieutenants, a towering man named Jarek, nodded. "What's the plan, sir? Sabotage the ship? Take the princess hostage?" Voss narrowed his eyes, considering the possibilities. "No," he said, a sinister smile forming. "We do something far more effective." "No," Ronan Voss said, his voice low but firm. "That would make us martyrs too quickly. We need to send a message, one that will echo across the stars." His followers listened in silence as he continued. "We wait for the right moment, when they least expect it. Then we take control of the ship and expose the humans who have been cozying up to the aliens." Unaware of the brewing conspiracy below, Princess Ilara was growing increasingly comfortable aboard the stellar horizon. The crew treated her with a mix of curiosity and respect, though she still caught the occasional glances of suspicion. Humans were far more open than she had expected. Their mannerisms were less restrained than those of her own people. There was an air of confidence about them, an adaptability that intrigued her. She spent much of her time in conversation with Captain Ward, learning about humanity's history, their struggles, and their triumphs. She was particularly fascinated by their resilience, their ability to adapt to any environment, and their drive to push the boundaries of what was possible. But as the days passed, Ilara began to sense a shift. It wasn't just the routine of space travel. Something else was lurking beneath the surface. There was an undercurrent of tension. She could feel it in the way some crew members whispered in hushed tones when they thought she wasn't listening, in the cautious glances exchanged in the corridors. It wasn't long before her suspicions were confirmed. Late one evening, as she made her way back to her quarters after dinner with Ward, she overheard a quiet conversation between two crew members. "I'm Siwo. Telling you, something's not right," one of them whispered. "I saw a group heading down to the cargo bay. They weren't wearing standard uniforms. Looked like they were trying to stay out of sight." "Could be nothing," the other replied. "Or maybe it's something. We should report it." Ilara's heart pounded as she quietly backed away from the corner where she had been listening. Someone was hiding on the ship. And it didn't take much to guess that it had something to do with her. She needed to inform Ward immediately. In his private quarters, Captain Ward stared at the encrypted message on his datapad. It was from Earth's Central Command, a warning. Intelligence had intercepted chatter about a potential threat to the stellar horizon. And the target? Princess Ilara, Ward's eyes narrowed as he read the details. Ronan Voss. The radical leader had been under surveillance for months, but no one had expected him to infiltrate one of the most critical diplomatic missions of the decade. Without hesitation, Ward activated the ship's internal security protocols. He had to find Voss and his followers before they could cause harm. His thoughts immediately turned to Ilara. She was in danger. "Security. Double the guard on the princess," Ward ordered through his communicator. and discreetly search the lower decks. We may have uninvited guests." Back in her quarters, Elara paced restlessly, unease growing within her. She had thought this journey would be one of discovery and understanding. Now she found herself caught in the middle of something far more dangerous. As the ship continued its journey through the void, Elara couldn't help but feel that the unknown dangers outside were far less threatening than the enemies lurking within. The ship's corridors were quiet, save for the steady hum of the engines. Yet beneath that tranquility, tension simmered, an unspoken warning of what was to come. Seated on the edge of her bed, Elara stared at the wall. She had sent a message to Captain Ward hours ago. No reply. Something was terribly wrong. A sudden knock broke the silence. Elara's heart raced as she stood. The door slid open to reveal Captain Ward. His expression was calm, controlled, but his eyes held urgency. "Princess," he greeted with a slight bow. "I'm sorry for the late visit, but we need to talk." Elara motioned for him to enter. "What's going on, Captain? I overheard something earlier, and I have a bad feeling." Ward stepped into the room, the door sealing behind him. "Your instincts are right. There's a group on board, led by a man named Ronan Voss. They managed to infiltrate the ship, likely with the intention of sabotaging this mission. We believe their target is you." Elara's eyes widened, but she remained composed. "I suspected as much. What's the plan?" "We've initiated a search of the lower decks. My security team is hunting them down as we speak. But we need to move carefully. If Voss realizes we're onto him, he could act unpredictably." The weight of the situation settled on Elara's shoulders. She had known this journey would be difficult, but she hadn't expected a direct threat to her life. Yet she wasn't about to be intimidated. The years of Zenithian royal training had prepared her for moments like this. "Captain," she said firmly, "I won't be a passive target. If Voss and his people are coming for me, we need to be proactive. Can we set a trap?" Ward raised an eyebrow, impressed by her resolve. "What do you suggest?" In the dimly lit cargo bay, Ronan Voss crouched with his followers, reviewing their final plans. The time to act was approaching. They had mapped out critical systems to disable, including the navigation controls and life support. If successful, the stellar horizon would have no choice but to turn back or eject them into space. "We strike at 0300 hours, Voss whispered. "No one will see it coming." His lieutenant Jarek nodded. "The princess will never make it back to Zenith, and once word spreads, both humans and Zenithians will be too busy blaming each other to realize what we've done." A thin smile formed on Voss's lips. "Exactly. By the time they figure it out, we will have started a conflict they can't contain, but their confidence would soon be met with an unexpected challenge." As the clock neared 0300 hours, Captain Ward and Princess Elara stood on the observation deck. Their trap was set. Ward had subtly rerouted ship operations, without Voss or his followers realizing it. Now all they had to do was wait. And when the time came, Elara would prove she wasn't just a diplomat. She was a warrior. To ensure that Voss's sabotage attempts would fail, Captain Ward and his team had taken every precaution. They had armed a select group of elite security officers with tranquilizers, ready to neutralize the insurgents without causing widespread panic. But the success of their plan hinged on one crucial element: drawing Voss out of hiding. "Are you sure about this?" Ward asked, glancing at Elara. "You'll be out there alone. Once they make their move, we might not have much time." Elara nodded confidently. "I'm certain. They won't pass up the opportunity if they think I'm vulnerable. We just have to make sure they believe the threat is real." The observation deck was the perfect setting for their trap. Elara would stand in plain sight, appearing alone, while the security team remained hidden nearby. If everything went according to plan, Voss and his group would take the bait, and Ward's team would capture them before they had a chance to cause real harm. Moving through the dimly lit corridors, Voss and his team carried small but lethal devices designed to sabotage the ship's core systems. According to their intel, the princess spent most of her time on the observation deck, the perfect place to strike. Voss's pulse quickened as they reached the final corner. "She's in there," Jarek muttered, peering around the edge. "Alone." Voss grinned. "She won't see us coming. Move in." Silent as shadows, his team crept forward, merging with the darkness. But just as Voss and his men stepped into the open, the lights blazed to life, exposing their position. "Drop your weapons!" Captain Ward's voice boomed from behind them. Before Voss could react, a dozen security officers emerged from hidden alcoves, tranquilizer rifles aimed and ready. "Ambush!" Jarek shouted, but it was too late. The security team moved with precision, firing off rounds that dropped Voss's followers one by one. But Voss refused to surrender. Snarling, he lunged at Ilara, a concealed blade flashing in his hand. Ilara had been ready for this. With a swift, fluid motion, she sidestepped his attack and delivered a sharp blow to his wrist, knocking the weapon from his grasp. Voss stumbled, clutching his arm in pain. "It's over, Voss," Ilara said, standing over him. Voss spat bitterly. "You think this changes anything? Others will rise. This is just the beginning." Ward stepped forward, his voice steady but cold. "No, Voss. This is the end of your rebellion. You won't tear us apart." Defiance burned in Voss's eyes as security officers restrained him. "You don't get it, do you?" he growled. "Humans and Zenithians are too different. This peace, this so-called cooperation, it's temporary, and when it crumbles, you'll wish you had listened." But Ward wasn't listening anymore. He turned to Ilara. "Are you all right?" Ilara nodded, though her heart still pounded from the fight. "I'm fine, but something tells me this isn't over, not by a long shot." Ward silently agreed. Voss's words, though laced with venom, held a truth they couldn't ignore. The peace between humans and Zenithians was fragile, and all it would take was a single spark to ignite a war. Even after Voss's capture, tension lingered aboard the stellar horizon. The rebellion had been stopped, but unanswered questions remained. As Voss and his crew were taken to the brig, Ilara returned to her quarters, her mind restless. Voss's words haunted her. Was lasting peace between their peoples truly impossible? She reached into her pocket, fingers brushing against a small data chip she had discovered earlier. She had intended to bring it up during the crisis, but now it felt more important than ever. Voss's plot had been exposed, but what if this chip contained something far more dangerous? She needed answers, and she knew exactly who to turn to. In the dim glow of Captain Ward's private quarters, Ilara handed him the data chip. Ward examined it briefly before inserting it into his console. His eyes remained focused as lines of code flashed across the screen, his brow furrowed. "It's encrypted," he muttered. Whoever put this together didn't want it getting out easily. Ilara leaned over his shoulder, watching the screen. "Can you crack it?" "I'll try," Ward replied, fingers moving swiftly over the interface. Minutes passed in tense silence, broken only by the occasional beep from the console. Then, suddenly, the screen flashed. Documents, logs, encrypted messages, data flooded the display. Ward's expression darkened. This isn't just about Voss and his group." He hesitated, disbelief creeping into his voice. "This goes deeper." Ilara's stomach tightened. "How deep?" Ward pointed at the screen. "These logs suggest there's a much larger conspiracy at play. Some of these messages, they're from high-ranking officials in both the human and Zenithian governments." Ilara's heart sank. "You're saying there are people on both sides trying to sabotage the peace?" Ward nodded grimly. "If what's in here is true, then Voss wasn't just a leader. He was a pawn. And the real players? He exhaled sharply. They're still out there. A cold realization settled over them both. The rebellion hadn't ended. It had only just begun. There were those who wanted to ensure that the alliance never succeeded. The realization sent a chill down Alara's spine. Her entire life she had believed in the possibility of peace, of unity between their people. But now, that vision felt more fragile than ever. She glanced at Captain Ward, who remained outwardly calm but was clearly unsettled by what they had uncovered. "What do we do?" Alara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "We take this to the council," Ward replied firmly. "But we need to be careful. We can't trust anyone until we know exactly who's involved. For now, we keep this between us." Alara nodded. "Agreed." Meanwhile, deep within the ship's brig, Ronan Voss sat in his cell, a cold smirk on his face. He had failed to destroy the ship, but he had planted something far more dangerous: doubt. He knew that Ward and the princess would soon discover the larger game at play. "It's only a matter of time," he whispered to himself, leaning back against the cold metallic wall. "They'll turn on each other eventually." Back on Zenith Prime, news of the attack on the stellar horizon had already reached the capital. The council chambers were in chaos. Leaders from both factions clashed in heated debate, trying to make sense of what had transpired. Accusations flew, fingers were pointed, and even though Voss had been captured, the seeds of division had already begun to spread. Inside a secure chamber, Chancellor Joran paced anxiously. He had always been a staunch supporter of the human Zenithian alliance, but even he now felt doubt creeping in. His aide, Callan, entered, his expression grim. "Chancellor," Callan began hesitantly, "there are rumors circulating. Some believe this attack wasn't an isolated incident. There may be more at play than we realize." Joran stopped pacing. "What do you mean?" Callan hesitated before speaking. "There's talk that members of both our governments, human and Zenithian, have been working behind the scenes to dismantle the peace process. I've heard whispers of secret meetings, covert operations." "Enough," Joran interrupted, rubbing his temples. If this was true, then they were in far more danger than he had thought. He turned toward the window, gazing out at the sprawling cityscape, the sky bathed in the glow of the setting sun. Everything he had worked for, everything he believed in, was at risk, but he couldn't afford to show weakness. "Send word to the humans," Joran finally said. "We need to meet. The princess and Captain Ward must be involved. We can't let this conspiracy destroy everything we've built." On board the stellar horizon, Ward received the encrypted transmission from Zenith Prime. He immediately sought out Alara, and together they read the message. Its urgency was unmistakable. The council had convened an emergency meeting, and both Alara and Ward had been summoned. The fate of the alliance was on the line. "We need to leave immediately," Ward said. "I agree," Alara responded, her voice steady. "But we must be careful. If there's a conspiracy at this level, we don't know who we can trust." Ward nodded. "Then we keep this information close. If anyone tries to undermine the alliance, we'll be ready." Upon arriving on Zenith Prime, Alara and Ward were escorted straight to the council chambers. The atmosphere was tense, thick with the weight of impending decisions. Chancellor Joran greeted them, his expression grim. "Princess Alara." "Captain Ward," he said, his tone grave. "We are facing a moment of crisis. Our intelligence suggests that forces are actively working against the alliance. If we make the wrong move, we risk igniting a conflict that neither of our species is prepared to handle." Alara stepped forward. "We've uncovered evidence that supports your fears, Chancellor. There are factions on both sides, powerful individuals, who want this alliance to fail. Joran's eyes darkened. He had suspected as much. Then we must root them out, he said. But we must do so quietly. If word of this conspiracy gets out, it could shatter the fragile trust we've built. Ward spoke next. We can't wait too long, Chancellor. Voss's group may have failed, but others will try again. We need to act now. Joran nodded. We'll begin by arresting those we can confirm are involved, but we'll need your help. What do you need us to do? Alara asked. Attend the public. Peace summit, Joran instructed. We must make it seem as though everything is proceeding as planned. Meanwhile, we will move against the conspirators in secret. You and Captain Ward must ensure that the focus remains on diplomacy, so our enemies don't suspect anything until it's too late. It was a dangerous gamble. But Alara and Ward both knew it was the only way to protect the alliance. They agreed to the plan, fully aware of the risks. The Peace Summit was held in the Grand Hall of Zenith Prime's capital. Leaders from both species gathered, their expressions a mixture of hope and suspicion. Standing on the podium beside Captain Ward, Alara could feel the weight of their expectations pressing down on her. She took a deep breath and began. Today, she said, her voice strong and unwavering, we stand on the threshold of a new era, an era of cooperation, understanding, and peace between our worlds. As she spoke behind the scenes, Chancellor Joran's security forces quietly moved into action. Key conspirators, including high-ranking officials, were taken into custody, their secret plans unraveled before they could do further damage. The plan was working, but the danger wasn't over yet. Suddenly, a figure stepped out from the shadows, a weapon raised, one of the conspirators desperate to take one final shot at ending the alliance. Before he could pull the trigger, Ward reacted. With swift, precise movement, he disarmed the attacker and subdued him in a single motion. Gasps echoed through the hall, but Alara remained unshaken. This is what we face, she said, standing firm. But we will not be deterred. Our future is one of unity, and no force, no conspiracy, will stand in our way. The summit ended in thunderous applause. As the conspirators were led away, it became clear. The alliance had survived its greatest challenge yet. Later, as Alara and Ward stood together, watching the sun set over Zenith Prime, they knew that the road ahead would still be difficult, but they had taken the first steps toward a brighter future. For now, humanity and Zenith would face it together.